Hey, what's up, and welcome to this episode of Rainer on Leadership, a podcast for church leadership as well as leadership in any environment. My name is Josh King.
My name is Sam, and I'm very glad that it's baseball season.
It's baseball season in America. My Texas Longhorns are number 2, and so I think they're doing pretty good. I don't watch it, but I think they're doing good.
I don't follow college ball because the MLB consumes me, and if I tried to follow I do follow a little bit the minor league. If I follow college and minor league and major league, that'd be my full-time job.
Man, I honestly can't. I was having a conversation with a guy at church Sunday, and I'm more of a football guy. I don't understand how baseball and basketball fans do this, because football, it's like, all right, for 16 weeks, I've got a game on Saturday. That's it. That's all you got to focus on. But you can have a game a Tuesday at 3 if you're a baseball fan, and it's like, what? How do you keep up with that? It's just too much.
So I end up watching about half the games, and a lot of times I'm tuning in at like the 6th inning or something like that. I'll go to about 30 games a year. So of the 162, I'm actually at 30 of them. And I'll take church members and guests and friends and other pastors and things like that. So I end up hanging out and just talking. And it's a good long season that is it's just this journey that you get to follow. It's like an ongoing story. I'm convinced that sports is simply soap operas for men. My great-great-grandma, I've got so many stories about Nanny and Granny, my great-grandma and my great-great-grandma. Yeah, my granddad's grandmother was still alive. I still remember her. And she's since passed on, of course. But anyway, she used to watch Days of Our Lives or whatever it was in the middle of the day, and had to tune in every day, and there's this ongoing drama. That's baseball. It's just, and there's women out there who tune in. I know that my wife's a fan, but, I'm just saying sports generally is soap operas for men, which has nothing to do with today's episode. But
It doesn't. We're going to talk about student ministry and how, a lot of people you'll hear is like, student ministry is not a stepping stone, it's a calling. And I get that, but maybe it is. And so we're going to talk about the good and the bad of student ministry here in just a second. But first, let's tell them about a place where you can go to prepare for any level of ministry.
Yeah, Southern Seminary's got all sorts of great programs. The one that we want to talk about is the Doctor of Ministry program. They obviously known for their theological education. I mean, goodness, they are the tops in the world at training you theologically. But what you don't want to miss out on are some of the more practical things. Like they have this what they call the problem-solving degree, which I think is a really good way to think about it, the Doctor of Ministry. So not only will it strengthen your church, but it will educate you as well. Good practical degree, well-rounded. A lot of people are attracted to the Doctor of Ministry for that reason. So it's not it's not a distraction for ministry. A lot of times they go, I got to go back to school or whatever. It's not a distraction for ministry. It's an extension of your ministry. So go to sbts.edu/solutions. Put a link in the show notes, sbts.edu/solutions. Or you could probably just type in Southern Seminary Doctor of Ministry program, get there too. But I don't know that we get any credit for that if if they go there. So click the link in the show notes. That'll help us out. But however you get there, go check them out.
Yeah, so Sam, this has been going on for so long, and we're on I feel like we've got enough data, enough observable reality that we can kind of see this. When I was starting ministry 25 years ago, and I know your story's a little different. You came in a little later, that sort of stuff, but I'm your run-of-the-mill, just young guy that got into ministry even before I was married. Everybody I knew started at the same spot. We all started in the exact same spot, and that was student ministry. We all kind of got a little gig and started doing student ministry at smaller churches, and then, I don't know, we just kind of worked our way through all that. Sometime around the time I was in late college, early seminary age, that shifted drastically. I mean, if you've ever tried to hire a student minister or really any minister, it's shifted completely toward church planters. And so you had these guys that maybe they had a hermeneutics class, but they were getting fully funded to start these churches all over the place. And And that's led to all sorts of, we're not here to talk about church planting or how that failed, but we are talking about this idea of what's seen now is like there's no longer the stepping stone. And Sam, I'm sure you've heard people say, well, student ministry or whatever kind of ministry, it's not a stepping stone. We're not trying to get up to the lead pastorate. And yet I would ask for us to think for just a minute about like, well, what if it was? What if it was not only a good stepping stone, but a necessary part of developing as a shepherd or as a pastor? So the way we've kind of set it up is like the good and the bad of student ministry, and or seeing it that way.
Yeah, it's a fair question, and all credit to you for coming up with this idea for the show. I do like it because I think that there is. I agree with you. I think we kind of need to get back to where we were before a little bit, where it maybe it is a good stepping stone. May not be the best term. Okay, we use that only because people know what we mean when we say
Sure.
it. But a training ground, a place to
Entry
prove
level?
yourself,
Yeah.
a place to work out your calling with people, with students. Yeah, listen, I don't have if someone's like, man, I'm young, I just got married, first baby's on the way, I'm gonna be a student pastor for 4, 5, 6 years, whatever it is. And I'm going to learn a lot about the church, and then I'll probably want to be a lead pastor. I don't have a problem with that at all.
I don't have a problem. I don't mind helping that person. Like you student
Exactly.
ministry, I will help develop you. Yeah.
And if I know that ahead of time, let's say we hired Kent's great. He's our student pastor. We just recently hired him. His only thing was, hey, I just give me a few opportunities to preach because I really want to sharpen those skills. So it's like, cool, man. Like I can do that. I can give you the pulpit on Sundays. So I think this idea that, you need to be a 65-year-old student pastor is, for most people, probably not a good thought. Although there are guys who are able to do it, and there's plenty of examples of, pastors who retired at retirement age in student ministry. And I don't have an issue with that. But for most of us, yeah, you end up desiring different things at different stages of life. Your kids get to middle school and it's like, I can't do the lock-in anymore. I can't go hang out at their ball games anymore, the student ball games, because my kids are doing that. So there is also a life stage issue there too.
Yeah, I think there's life stage. It's like I explain to my teenage sons sometimes. It's like, look, part of this whole thing is that you're going to push the limits, but you do so underneath my protection. I help to mitigate the damage of your dumb. And that's how it works. So I want them to be adventurous, and I want them to try different things while I'm there to mitigate the damages. It's the same thing when I was doing student ministry. I was pushing the envelope. I was learning things. I was learning about person-to-person relationships and established church culture and those sort of things. But I had a lead pastor, a senior pastor, mitigating the damages, talking to me about it before, helping me navigate this, walking into the committee and being like, yeah, he's dumb. He doesn't know yet. We're trying, that kind of stuff, and that helps. But so often, young ministers are just jumping straight to the lead seat or the number one chair, and then they're wondering why this is such a heavy burden. Well, it's because you didn't work up to it. Now, the reverse side of that is treating student ministry like it's a stepping stone, perpetuates this idea that it's a lesser than. And here's how I want to frame that. I don't think the students need less, like a less robust theology. I don't think that they need less one-on-one care. I don't think they need less care and compassion. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying we put the B team in on that. But what I am saying is that the students are also getting theological training from my preaching. Like if we're talking about this church here, they're getting that same stuff. I'm teaching as well, so it's not like they're not getting that. What I'm looking for is a connection point, which you brought up life stages. The reality is a young couple in their 20s, they're just more aware and informed on youth culture than I am. They just are. And I have teenage kids, and it just feels like the older your kids get, the less You would know about all of this sort of stuff. So I'm not saying it's a less than. I'm actually saying that in some areas you're actually better equipped in that role, and I think you should.
You know what my favorite thing to do is to use Gen Z slang in
Around your
sl-
kids.
slightly off ways and say words like "riz" and "drip" and other things.
Yeah,
And like
yeah,
I
yeah.
know what it means, and
Hmm.
I know how to use it in an appropriate way, but I
Hmm.
say it in such a way that I'm clearly a millennial, and
Hmm.
I get the eye rolls. I love the eye rolls. Or you miss like they have their whole code language with the emojis that's very different than the millennial use of emojis.
Sure.
Uh, so I like misusing the emojis as well. The whole like bones thing, like that's like means like I'm laughing so hard, and then the us millennials we just use the laughing emoji, but that's not cool. No, you got to use the bones
Yeah,
emoji.
man, I've just fully embraced not being cool. But I did get in an argument with my fifth grader the other day about a word that's it's a common English word. I used it as it is, the actual English word, and he was trying to tell me I'm not using it correctly, and I was like, "Well, son, I have a doctorate, and you're in fifth grade. Who do you think knows how to speak this word the right way?" And he actually stopped and thought for a minute. He was like, "Well, I guess you would know." And I was like, "Well, then let's just go with mine." So
I am
that's
totally
how it is.
using that with my children. Son, I've got a doctorate,
And you're in fifth grade. So
and you're in fifth grade.
yeah. Okay. So there's some other sides of this. There's another side where there's a good side of this where younger pastors need a place to mature and to gain experience, and that's what we're kind of talking about with this mitigated damages sort of situation. But that's where the outside influence, like the lead pastor, I can help shepherd in this way. But there's something that happens in the person themselves. There's something that happened to me as a student minister as I was maturing as a student minister and a minister in general. And I know, Sam, you went straight into you were kind of itinerant preaching, and then that interim type of preaching, and then became a pastor. But I think even your situation proves that there was a safe place. You had a smaller church with some seasoned saints that were allowing you to
That's
mature.
one. That's one way to look at it. The church was all but dead. I wasn't. I mean, they weren't even hadn't had services in 2 years,
Yeah, yeah,
and so it's like, how much damage are you going to do as a young
right.
pastor? Not a whole lot. Maybe you're actually gathering and you're preaching heresy to them. I mean, but short, that's about the worst that could happen because they weren't even
Hmm.
really a church. So we just kind of regathered with 6 people. But I view that as a very similar training ground as student ministry. It was with a select group where the damage, if I was going to do stupid, the damage was going to be minimal. Right now, to the people that are hurt, of course, it's a big deal. I don't
Right.
mean to minimize, hurt or anything like that. I'm just saying I was inexperienced, and I had to gain the experience some way, and I was going to make some really bad decisions along the way. Well, when you're planting a church and you're coming into the church planting situation like that, it's a different animal. So I very intentionally didn't plant a church because one, I was called to the established church, although that's not what we were saying back then. I just wanted to go to these churches that nobody wanted. That was what's in my brain. We
Hmm.
kind of
Hmm.
brought back the whole idea of established church with our
Yeah.
podcast, the ESD podcast. But yeah, I mean, I my first church, like, what was going to happen? Like, not a whole lot. If things went sideways, not a whole lot.
Hmm.
So I do think that there is something to that. If you're a younger pastor, you need a place to mature and gain experience. The Bible talks about this, like, hey, be careful with the young guys, like putting them in
Yeah.
positions of leadership.
Right.
So I think that principle applies to us today. And yeah, student ministry, it's a great place to kind of, get your feet beneath you in ministry in a place where the damage is minimized. Now, some people may say, hey, you're dealing with minors. And, if you're a 22-year-old unmarried single man, be careful
Hmm.
around, 17-year-old girls as their pastor. Hey, 100% as the dad of a teenage daughter, another one about to be a teenage, close to being 2 teenage daughters, totally read you on that. All that I'm saying is that, like you said, there's a life stage issue there. There's a connection point. You're one generation removed from the high schoolers, or maybe even just 10 years, half a generation removed. And, if there's a lot of oversight, it's a great place to learn. I think we're missing that in a lot of today's churches, where it's been a struggle in the student ministry, finding good people to be student pastors.
Yeah, because here's the deal. Seminary and Bible college are going to teach you one side of the equation, and you need that. I think that's a good thing to do. I have all my feelings on the way seminaries do, but there's that over there. But then there's this other side that the seminary, and I'm saying that broadly, Bible college, seminary, we're a formal theological education. It wasn't ever built to teach you. What you're going to have to learn that is actually on the job. You're going to have to actually learn that. And so I can still recall the names, of course, of the pastors that I worked under. I was their student minister, and I became a student of them. I looked at them almost like a non-official professor, and I would ask them things, and we would prepare for things, and they would talk me through different conflicts, and not just the ones that I was dealing with in the student ministry, but also just the ones that the church was dealing with. And I would go with them to the denominational meetings and learn and meet the people that they meet, those sort of things. That was the other side of the equation. And so that helped me learn. My school taught me theology, but my churches taught me ministry. And that's the part that I think a lot of these people who just jump straight from the academic to the what I would call the first chair or the lead role, they're missing out on. And that's the part that I think if we stop seeing it as, let's just go ahead and, I'm going to say it this way. I do think that student ministry can be a stepping spot. I also think that that's not a bad thing. And if we stop seeing it as a completely bad thing, then you can start to really learn and improve your skills.
Yeah, I also think that my 2 years at Union Band Baptist was not a bad thing either.
Right.
I didn't go into it thinking, well, I'm going to put 2 years in, I'll move on to a full-time church. I actually went into it thinking I'm going to stay a bivocational pastor for my career. But, I'm with you, man. There is a natural progression in the corporate world. There's a natural progression in the academy. There's a natural progression through government positions. Why wouldn't there be something similar in the church, at least in our culture, our American culture, right? If you want to make this a career. And I get, it's a calling, it's not a career. I understand. I'm just saying, if it's your full-time job, it's your profession. So, there's going to be some natural progression there. But back to the bad. So this is mainly good, but let's talk about what can happen.
Sure.
So let's say you're a student pastor, you've got all this success, all these families are coming to the church because, they're drawn to the student ministry, and you think, you're the reason the church is growing. And then you're like, you know what? I've doubled the student ministry, tripled it, whatever. All these families love me. I'm going to go plant a church, or I'm going to go be a lead pastor, and I'm going to see the same level of success. Well, not so fast. That doesn't always happen. There is not a one-to-one correlation between success in student ministry and success as a lead pastor.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. In fact, you already have all of the elements. You already have the data that's laying there on the table for you, Mr. or Mrs. Successful student minister. You've got that laying right there in front of you to know why leading a church is not necessarily going to be a one-to-one. And I'll show you. One of the reasons that you were so successful in the student ministry was because you either instinctively or intentionally knew how to communicate and to attract a certain culture. You were able to speak that culture. You were able to operate within that culture and that sort of stuff. Well, once you go to the church as a whole, you have multiple generations. And so there's multiple things. So you still know what you need to do. It's connect to the generations. But what the challenge is you're going to have to be able to move between them and lead as a whole. So yeah, a lot of times I've seen it, like you've probably seen it, Sam. You got this stud of a student minister, and they take a church and they just nearly kill the thing almost immediately. Did they shift up their preaching style, or are they a bad preacher? Are they a bad person? No, they just failed to realize that has to be translated up to the whole. And leading is different too. I mean, you were engaged this generation's minds, but now you've got to engage their parents and their grandparents in a different way that also kind of takes them into consideration. So there's a number of factors there. I think you've got it. I just think you need to translate it.
If you are a student pastor listening to this and you're like, yeah, I'd eventually like to be a lead pastor, I kind of feel God pushing me in that direction. Great. One of the best things you can do is to sit down with your lead pastor and to walk through the politics of the church. Because one of the things that you're missing in student ministry, generally, these are broad strokes, mind you, but is the politics involved in the church. And you, as a student pastor, you are largely shielded from that. That tends to be sometimes the executive pastor, but it tends to be the lead pastor's role to kind of manage all of that. By the way, politics is not necessarily a bad thing. Politics is just all about the allocation of scarce resources. So, you've got your worship pastor fighting the student ministry over budget, allocations. Like, how are you going to manage that? Well, they may be both right. You just got to figure that out. That's a political decision. There's, parents in the church, families in the church that wants, things a different way. You've got to manage that. Worship styles, programming, time slots even sometimes can be political. So you're missing that. You're not totally missing it in the student ministry, but it tends to show itself more as peer pressure. Like you see that among the students and some of the things that happen in their world. But it's a whole different politics is a whole different ballgame at the lead pastor world. So that's one of the best things you can do is like, what might I be missing, not fully getting trained at in the student ministry? And I would say just the political machination that is the church.
Yeah, and it's not to say no. Let's just pretend like Sam and I. You are our student minister listener, and I know of student ministers that listen to this show. They want to lead at a different level. They're thinking about it. They've got their resumes out, and they're thinking, "This is what I want to do." We don't think you're dumb. We don't think that you don't know what's going on. There's just things that you haven't learned yet. One of the biggest shifts between student ministry and lead pastoring that happened for me was the vision that I can see. Like, I can clearly see what we need to do and the rate at which they can move toward it. In student ministry, it was, every year you get a fresh new group and they want newness, and everything about the thing is new. Everything about a teenager's life is new. And so newness is not hard. You can keep doing new things. When you're adults, there's this settling in. And I just didn't appreciate that fact early on, and I'm learning to appreciate it more. And it's like, we can still change. It's just going to have to be different. It's going to have to be a different way and moving people along and how I see. When you're a student minister, you just change it. That's it. But when you're an LP, you're going to have to shift that a little bit slower. So, again, I think student ministry can be a very good place to develop. And the part that I often see with this, and you're hitting on this, Sam, is your greatest asset for that eventual next step is the lead pastor. Go chat with that person, learn from that person. Don't hide from that. Don't fight that person or their vision or anything like that, because then you're going to learn real quick how you need to behave as a lead pastor. So, I think that could be a helpful thing, is to see the lead pastor as a stepping stone, which, again, proves my point. When you run out there by yourself, you don't have that asset. You don't have that person there to walk you through the steps.
Indeed. So I think you and I are pretty much in agreement on this. We aren't always in agreement on our positions, but we are here. Student ministry is a very necessary ministry, a good one. We need good student pastors. We're very grateful. I'm grateful for the one that we have at West Braden, and Kent's awesome. Nothing appeals to me more than, Kent or anyone else sitting down in my office saying, "Hey, teach me this. Like, I see this. I want to learn more about it." I love that. So I think your advice is good. 9 out of 10 lead pastors, are going to say, "Yeah, I would love to teach you this." Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for asking. So I do think that student ministry has taken a back seat in many churches and in seminaries and in training and all of that. It used to be more at the forefront. I think what we're both arguing for is let's put it out there more at the forefront. I think it would help the church, and I think it would help the church not just with student ministry, but future lead pastors as well.
Yeah, of course.
All right. So thank you for tuning into today's episode. We've got another one coming up soon. We do 2 a week now. I want to thank our sponsor, Church Teams. If you have a systems problem, they have a solution. If you have a software problem, they have a solution. If you're like, I don't even know what I'm doing with the website, text to give, online giving, project management, I don't know any of that stuff. Guess what? They can help you. And if you're struggling with it, they can take it off your plate. This is what I love about their solutions is they take stuff off the plate of the pastor. So give Church Teams a call. The way that you can do that, and I say give them a call. I'm dating myself. You gotta like go to the website, click the link in the show notes. Go.churchteams.com. Again, go.churchteams.com. They've got great customer service. They would love to share more with you at go.churchteams.com.
Yeah, and while we're talking about sharing, make sure that you share the show. And if you know other young ministers that are looking at, taking that next step in leadership, man, that's what we're here for. We're here to talk through those things and to give you some conversations. I know of some church leaders that actually use episodes from our shows to talk about the different topics with their leaders. So let us break the ice. Let us give you some stuff to talk about, and y'all can talk about it together. But thank you for those of you who do share the show, those of you who are subscribed, those of you who listen. We'll catch you next week.